chasing on a sleepless night. Try to catch me howling at the moon.
What's up guys, and welcome back to Park Pros. Today we're starting a new series on the channel called Coaster Quickies. This idea is not so subtly stolen from one of my favorite YouTubers out there, Cosmonaut Variety Hour. Going forward, I think I'm going to do these primarily for new coasters that I want to review, but don't necessarily want to make a full-length video on. Think of these as a shorter form of our normal coaster reviews, but where we skip over the usual history and layout segments, and I just dive straight into my thoughts about these rides. And for our first Coaster Quickie, today we'll be talking about SeaWorld Orlando's new, not-so-family multi-launch coaster from Premier Rides, Icebreaker. I rode Icebreaker a couple times a few days before its official opening, and I enjoyed it. In terms of the actual ride, I think Icebreaker is a ton of fun. The rockabye-style launch builds anticipation well and delivers some pretty good pops of air in between the spike and the top hat. And on the final launch, you get a shockingly good moment of ejector on that hump right before the top hat, and then another one going up over the top hat, especially if you're sitting in the back row. I was not expecting this coaster to have as much aggressive airtime as it does. After that, the back portion of the layout has a good few twists and turns, and another really great airtime moment heading into the brake run. Overall, this is just a really fun little coaster that I don't think will offend anyone. If you watched my review of West Coast Racers from years ago, I have a lot of the same thoughts on Icebreaker. I think Premier does a really nice job with these smaller scale launch coasters that have unique layouts, enjoyable elements, and aren't overly intense or aggressive. But there are a few minor problems that I do have with this coaster. First of all, the comfort collars are not it. And even the lap bar that the comfort collar attaches to came down really far on some of the airtime hills and made a few of my rides just really painful. I find the Premier trains they use on coasters like this and the Skyrocket models to be crammed, clunky, and difficult to get in and out of. If Premier can get away with having just lap bars on coasters like Mr. Freeze and Full Throttle, I don't know why they can't figure out a safe way to implement them on coasters like these. Because the crammed restraints and comfort collars come really close to making these rides deal breakers, especially for taller people like me. On to the next complaint I have with Icebreaker, and this has less to do with the actual ride and more to do with the narrative around it. I think the main takeaway of this ride that I noticed from the rest of the media is that Icebreaker was a quote, perfect fit for this park, or exactly what the park needed. But like, is it really? Just take a look at the height restrictions of SeaWorld's roller coasters. Mako, 54 inches. Kraken, 54 inches. Manta, 54 inches. Super Grover's 38 inches, and then you have Journey to Atlantis, which is 42, but I'd label that more as a water/dark ride. So obviously, on paper what the park needed was a mid-level coaster with a shorter height requirement to appeal to a wider age range of riders. Because right now, if you have a kid below the height of 54 inches, the only real roller coaster they can ride in this park is the kiddie coaster. And of course, Icebreaker was supposed to fill that void with its original height restriction of 48 inches, but right before they opened the ride to the public, the park quietly raised it to 54 inches. Now I can't remember if SeaWorld initially marketed Icebreaker as a family coaster, or if that's just what enthusiasts labeled it as when it was announced. But either way, I think we can all agree that a family-friendly roller coaster is what we expected Icebreaker to be. So if that 54-inch height requirement does stay put, I can't really help but wonder what the point of this coaster was. I guess looking at it from purely a perspective of what type of roller coasters SeaWorld Orlando was missing from their lineup, Icebreaker does fill the void of having a launch coaster, which is fine. But you could have done that with something like Fire Chaser Express, for example, which has a much more inclusive height restriction of 39 inches while still having a ton of thrilling elements. Or even just look within the chain at launch coasters like Manta or Wavebreaker, which both have height restrictions of 48 inches. I feel like you really could, and should have, killed two birds with one stone with this one. And if the restriction you had to work with was going to be 54 inches anyways, why not just build a better launch coaster like Pantheon? Hell, even Iron Gwazi has a 48-inch height requirement. I think purely from a park needs perspective, there were probably a lot of better options out there for SeaWorld Orlando, than a non-inverting, sub 100-foot launch coaster with a non-inclusive height restriction. Now again, in a vacuum, Icebreaker is still a super fun roller coaster and would be a great addition to almost every theme park in the country. But if the goal of this project was to finally build an inclusive roller coaster the entire family could enjoy, I don't really think you did that. All I'm saying that is if the 2023 Project Penguin coaster that's already being constructed doesn't have a shorter height requirement, which being a B&M coaster, I don't think is very likely, I don't really see a reason why parents with kids below the age of 10 would choose to go to SeaWorld Orlando. Because what are their kids supposed to ride? Anyways, let's go ahead and throw Icebreaker into one of our tier lists. And I'm gonna go ahead and put Icebreaker into the fun tier, because that's exactly what it is. It's a good, re-rideable coaster with some fun elements, great airtime, and an overall fun ride experience. And as SeaWorld as a chain continues to try to distance themselves from animal-based amusement by building thrill rides as a mean to do that, I do think this is another nice addition to this park's coaster lineup. But if the park does end up sticking with the 54-inch height requirement, I just can't agree with the people who say that this was a quote, perfect fit for this park. Anyways, that's all for this Coaster Quickie. If you enjoyed, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. As always, thank you guys for checking out the video, and we'll see you all next time.